Harry Potter and Christmas go together like peanut butter and jelly. In fact, many Harry Potter fans consider the movies Christmas movies and watch them during the holiday season. I guess they're also considered Halloween movies, as Hogwarts also seems to celebrate that quite a bit. But Christmas is the only one that comes up in each book of the series and introduces a key plot point every time. It's a halfway point that J.K. Rowling strategically uses to loop the reader into something new and important. Whether it's introducing the invisibility cloak and the Mirror of Erised in Book 1, or Harry and Hermione traversing Godric's Hollow in Book 7, Christmas time always holds some sort of significance in the story. So in today's video, let's relive these incredible festive moments and not only rank them, but reveal how close each movie got to its book counterpart. My name is Gibby, and welcome to Movies vs. Manuscripts Harry Potter Holiday Edition. Thanks for tuning in to Fact or Fantasy Harry Potter, a channel dedicated to all things wizarding. If you enjoy breakdowns and lore videos, be sure to like and subscribe, as well as share with a Harry Potter loving friend. Of course, before we jump into Harry's first Christmas at Hogwarts, I want to shout out Jason, Joshua, Timothy, RoboSteve, Maha, and the rest of my incredible members who help make these videos possible every month. And now, let's not waste any more time and just get right into Harry's first year in the Philosopher's Stone and what might be the most Christmassy Christmas of all. To start things off, let's talk about what happens in the movie, and then rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, and then we'll do the same for the book, finding the major differences between the two along the way. So what does the movie show? Well, this is probably considered the most Christmassy of all the Harry Potter movies because we really see the castle get into the festive spirit. First, we watch as Hagrid lugs a massive tree into the castle, and then Hermione walks into the Great Hall to tell Harry and Ron goodbye. They're playing wizard's chess as Professor Flitwick and other teachers decorate the castle, and Hermione instructs them to look in the library for Nicholas Flamel. But after Ron complains, she leans in and says that they haven't looked in the restricted section yet. It's kind of crazy to think that Hermione is already a rule breaker in year 1 of the movies. After this brief scene, we get to Christmas morning as Ron shows Harry his presents. And as we all know, this is when Harry gets the invisibility cloak. And finally, we get our scenes that introduce us to the Mirror of Erised, which all took place during the holiday break. All in all, this is one of the more festive representations of the holidays, especially because the first movie is the least dark. Once you hit the Prisoner of Azkaban, things obviously change. Not that they were supposed to get that dark so early, but as we all know, the director of The Prisoner of Azkaban purposefully made the movie a bit more grim. Pun intended. Which is why, on a scale of 1 to 10, I give the Philosopher's Stone movie an 8. Why not a 9? Well, because even with how festive it is, we didn't get the full impact of Christmas communicated in the same way the book did. So on that note, let's dive into the book and see what really happened. In The Philosopher's Stone, Christmas takes place in Chapter 12, which is titled The Mirror of Erised. But the chapter doesn't begin on Christmas Day. Instead, it sets the stage for what will be the holiday break after their first semester. We learn that snow and ice had covered the entire castle, and Fred and George had bewitched snowballs to follow Quirrell around, pelting his turban. We get a brief moment of Malfoy teasing Ron, suggesting that he could become gamekeeper after Hagrid. Plus, Hagrid is shocked to learn that the trio are still investigating Flamel during their Christmas break. And then we read about exactly that as the trio continuously research all the way up into their last moment with Hermione, who leaves the boys at the castle. She makes a comment on her way out that she'll ask her parents about Flamel, as perhaps he's somehow related to Muggles, which is why they can't find him in the library. But it's actually Harry who is the one with a suspicion about the restricted section, which will come up later on. The boys then spend their time in the empty common room as most of the kids have gone home for the holidays, and Ron teaches Harry wizard's chess. Then on Christmas morning, they both wake up and Harry is astonished to see that he not only received a gift for Christmas, but multiple gifts. He unwraps a wooden flute from Hagrid, a 50-pence piece from the Dursleys, a box of chocolate frogs from Hermione, and a hand-knitted emerald green jumper from Mrs. Weasley. Then to top it all off, he unwraps the invisibility cloak. However, unlike the movie, the book doesn't just jump cut to the library. Instead, we get the rest of Christmas. Fred and George burst in wearing their own custom jumpers and force Perry to wear his as well. They go on and enjoy the Christmas feast, which is magnificent and has magical crackers that explode with toys. And this is actually how Harry gets his own personal wizard's chess set, as it comes out of a magical cracker. Before that, he had been borrowing Seamus's pieces, and they didn't trust him. The boys also witness Hagrid getting a little tipsy and planting a kiss on McGonagall, who blushes and giggles. It's quite the festive sight, and it's a shame that we never saw it in the movie. But that's not even all of it, because after the feast, the boys go out and have their annual snowball fight. Then it's later that Harry decides to test out the invisibility cloak on his own, and he visits the restricted section. Similarly to the movie, he randomly finds the Mirror of Erised and then becomes addicted to it, visiting it multiple times over the break. Ron even tries to convince him that it's unhealthy and he shouldn't go look at it anymore. But Harry won't listen. It's only after Dumbledore intervenes that Harry stops. And then the chapter ends and the school year resumes. In my opinion, this is the pinnacle of a Hogwarts Christmas. Harry is young enough that there's no major issue plaguing him during this time, and he and Ron fully enjoy the festivities of Christmas without a care in the world. Because of this, we're starting off our list very strong with a 9.5 out of 10 for the Philosopher's Stone. However, when comparing the book to the movie, we've come up with a lot of omissions, which is why the movie only landed an 8 out of 10. I wish we would have seen the snowball fight or the Christmas feast with the magical crackers. I think the movie put a bit too much focus on the Mirror of Erised, which stole time from smaller details that help build the atmosphere of what life at Hogwarts was really like. Now, if you're new to the channel, you might not know that I do a series called Movies vs. Manuscripts, in which I compare the books to the movies scene by scene and page by page, and find every single change, revision, and omission. I point out all of the location, character, timeline, and plot issues between the book and adaptation. So, that being said, I'm not going to go into too much detail today because I've already done it for most of these movies. So check the links in the description to find the episode that relates to Harry's first Christmas at Hogwarts. Anyway, let's move on to the Chamber of Secrets and discuss what happened during Harry's second Christmas at the castle. Obviously, the movie kept things short and focused on the biggest plot point that takes place on Christmas Day, and that is the Polyjuice Potion mission. The scene opens with Hermione showing Ron and Harry a couple of treats that she's infused with a powerful sleeping potion. I'm assuming this once again is at the feast, but it looks nothing like the typical Christmas feast that we just discussed from the first book. And this is something that I think the movie keeps getting wrong because they just don't seem to understand that the real Christmas feast was a crazy party of sorts. But anyway, the scene then moves on with Harry and Ron drugging Crabbe and Goyle and meeting Hermione in the bathroom where they have the potion. They all transform after taking the potion, and the boys go without Hermione, who seems to be having an issue of some kind. After running into Percy, Ron and Harry, who look like Crabbe and Goyle, are saved by Draco, who then takes them to the Slytherin common room. They find out that Draco isn't the heir of Slytherin, and before changing back into themselves, they run off to the bathroom. Finally, they find Hermione, who has been transformed into a cat, and that's how Christmas ends in the second year. As you can probably guess, this one gets a low rating as it really doesn't feel like Christmas in the movie. So I give it a 4 out of 10. The book, on the other hand, actually includes more details about Christmas, similarly to the Philosopher's Stone. So here's what happens. After the double attack that petrified Nearly Headless Nick and Justin Finch-Fletchley, students were scrambling to book their seats on the train home, which meant that the castle was almost completely empty for Christmas. However, luckily for the trio, Draco, Crabbe, and Goyle were all staying at the castle. This presented the perfect opportunity to execute on their plan. So, on Christmas morning, Hermione walked into the boys' dorms and woke up Ron and Harry, telling them that the potion was ready. She also gave them their Christmas gifts, and Hedwig brought Harry a letter from the Dursleys along with a toothpick. The letter asked Harry if he could stay at the castle during the summer holidays as well, and the toothpick was of course his Christmas gift. On top of this, Harry got some fudge from Hagrid, a jumper from Mrs. Weasley, a book about Quidditch from Ron, and a special quill from Hermione. Then, before they put their Polyjuice Potion into action, they enjoyed the Christmas feast. In fact, the book says, no one, not even someone dreading taking Polyjuice Potion later, could fail to enjoy Christmas dinner at Hogwarts. We read about the incredible meal, Hagrid singing carols, and Malfoy making fun of Harry's jumper from across the table. Then it was time. The boys got hairs from Crabbe and Goyle along with their shoes and met Hermione in the bathroom. The boys then took the potion and met up with Draco and learned that he was not the heir of Slytherin. But they do learn that Draco's home was raided by the Ministry recently. He tells them that his father didn't get in any serious trouble as he was able to hide all the dark artifacts under the drawing room floor. After this, the boys return to Hermione to find her looking like a cat, and then they take her to the hospital wing. And that is Christmas in year 2. I can't rate this one nearly as high as the Philosopher's Stone, simply because most of the Christmas theme is taken up by their mission to pin Draco as the heir. However, we still do learn about the feast and some more of their days off during break. So I'll give it a 6.5 out of 10. Compared to the first year, this one is a lot more accurate between the book and movie. Of course, there are some small changes you might have picked up on here or there, but for the most part, it was correct. The biggest issues that I have is the exclusion of the true Christmas feast, as well as the detail of where Draco's father hid the dark magical artifacts. I know that second part doesn't have to do with Christmas, but this bit of insider information helps Ron's father catch Lucius with some bad stuff later on. And what's better than that? Anyway, once again, I'll have the corresponding MVM episode linked in the description if you want to get really detailed about the changes to this chapter. But now, let's pick up the pace a little and head into The Prisoner of Azkaban, which is honestly our first step into the controversial decisions the movies made. Because this movie decided to completely cut the third book's key Christmas moment. In the movie, we really only get a small taste of the Christmas break, and that is when Harry uses the invisibility cloak and the Marauder's map to sneak into Hogsmeade. The movie shows Ron and Hermione looking at the Shrieking Shack as Draco comes to taunt them, and then Harry saves the day. After this, Harry follows the Minister of Magic into the top room of the Three Broomsticks, where McGonagall shares the story of Sirius Black with Madame Rosmerta. And that's pretty much it. However, I must clarify that this isn't really Christmas, as the only corresponding parts of the scene take place in the chapter before The Prisoner of Azkaban's Christmas chapter. And it omits what I would consider Harry's greatest Christmas gift of all time, which is the Firebolt. That's right, Harry gets the Firebolt as a Christmas gift, and in the book we read about how it causes a rift in the trio as Hermione insists on turning it in to McGonagall. After all, it could be a ploy for Sirius Black to get to Harry and hurt him. Harry and Ron are livid at Hermione for tattling on this incredible anonymous gift, and Harry doesn't get it back for quite a while. If you're familiar with the movie, then you'll know that they don't give the Firebolt to Harry until the final scene, which is a crazy timeline shift. But this isn't the entire focus of Harry's third Christmas at Hogwarts. As we know, things are about to get insane in future years, and this is still one of the more normal Christmases he has at the castle. We read about how he woke up to the Firebolt on Christmas morning, but beside that, Ron and Hermione bickered about Crookshanks' obsession with Scabbers, and then at lunchtime they had the Christmas feast. Dumbledore had pulled multiple tables together as they had a much smaller gathering than usual, and this time they were visited by none other than Professor Trelawney. She at first refused to take a seat as she would have made their number 13, but at Dumbledore's insistence, she sat down. McGonagall and her go back and forth a bit, which is kind of funny because McGonagall is always fed up with Trelawney's antics. They have a nice dinner, and then it's when the trio gets up to leave that Hermione stays back to talk with McGonagall. Harry and Ron get a visit soon after in the Gryffindor common room as McGonagall confiscates the broom, and that is where the chapter ends. Now, as for the movie, I'd give it a big fat 0 if I could, but that seems a little harsh, so I'll give it a 1. Why? Well, because other than snow on the ground, there's literally no mention of Christmas. Now, the book, on the other hand, I actually kind of like this Christmas, because it's much different than the previous two. It's a lot more intimate as there are only 13 people at the Christmas feast, and Harry gets his most iconic gift of all, which is the Firebolt. Unlike the Chamber of Secrets, we actually get a few pages of Christmas feast details, instead of just one paragraph. So I'll give the book version of this Christmas a 7.5 out of 10. And of course, for the full detailed breakdown of this chapter, you can check out the link below. Moving right along though, we come to the Goblet of Fire, which has one of the more popular Christmas chapters in the Harry Potter series, and that is the Yule Ball. I guess I never really pieced together that this was Christmas when I watched the movies, but yeah, it takes place on Christmas Day. Obviously, the movie shows the trio attending, with Harry being a champion and Hermione being the date of a champion. This of course causes issues as Ron is upset that Hermione went with Victor Crumb. To be honest, there isn't much more to say in regards to the movie scene because I think you all know it pretty well, and it's pretty short and sweet. The trio shows up, Ron and Hermione argue, and then the night ends. Done. But in the book, things are a lot more complicated, and there's a handful of incredibly important details that the movie left out regarding this dance. It's a pretty long chapter, so I'm not going to summarize it all right now, but let me just touch on the key omitted plot points. First, on Christmas morning, Dobby is the one who wakes up Harry. Dobby gives Harry a pair of socks that he knitted himself, and Harry and Ron return the favor by giving Dobby some of their old socks. Harry also gets a Quidditch book from Hermione, dung bombs from Ron, a knife from Sirius, sweets from Hagrid, and the usual sweater from Mrs. Weasley. Of course, they have their annual Christmas feast and the snowball fight outside, but Hermione leaves early to get ready for the ball. Which brings me to the second major omission, which is that during the ball, Percy Weasley is there representing Barty Crouch, who has been absent from work at the Ministry. This is a key plot point that clues us into the fact that there's something fishy going on with Crouch. The third thing is that Harry and Ron walk out to the garden to avoid Percy, and they overhear two very important conversations. The first one they overhear is Karkaroff telling Snape about something getting clearer on his arm, which obviously is in reference to the Death Eater mark that he has. And the second conversation they overhear is arguably the most important, and that is Hagrid revealing to Madame Maxime that he is a half-giant. This sets off a massive subplot that carries through the rest of the book and even into the Order of the Phoenix. Then finally, to end the night, Cedric Diggory pulls Harry aside and tells him about taking a bath with the egg, which the movie shows as a later scene, but in the book it happens at the ball. So as you can see, there are quite a few key points that the movie warped. Anyway, as for the movie, does it get me into the Christmas spirit? Not really. The Yule Ball is white and snowy, but that only brings it up to a 5 out of 10 for me. As for the book, we've got all sorts of stuff happening. We have the usual gifts of Christmas morning, as well as the feast and the snowball fight, and then the Yule Ball on top of that with the important plot points. So I think this one in the book has to be an 8 out of 10 for me, mainly because of those key plot points that get revealed on Christmas Day. Now that we've officially crossed the halfway point of the Harry Potter Christmases, I wanted to take a brief moment to give a shout out to Audible. They don't sponsor these videos officially or anything like that, but I do have an affiliate link in the description that gets you one free audiobook of your choice, and in return, Audible helps support the channel. It's a win-win for the both of us, and personally, I'd claim that free audiobook right now, because the first 2 full-cast Harry Potter books have just released, and they're so good. So check out the link in the description to be taken to my custom collection on Audible, where you can claim your free copy of The Philosopher's Stone or The Chamber of Secrets or anything else that you want, all while supporting my journey here on YouTube. Anyway, with that being said, let's dive back into the Hogwarts holiday spirit and take a look at book number 5. Okay, now that we're into the Order of the Phoenix, we've finally gotten to where my Movies vs. Manuscript series has yet to reach. So, like I've said, check out the 4 episodes linked in the description to learn about Harry's first 4 Christmases in way more detail. But now, for year number 5 and on, we're flying blind, and things are starting to pick up the pace and get a little bit more intense. In the movie, we have 2 key scenes for this Christmas. First is the final DA meeting in which Cho and Harry have their first kiss, and the second is Harry's dream and rescue of Mr. Weasley at the Ministry of Magic, which then goes on into the Christmas scene at Grimmauld Place with Sirius. It's fairly short and sweet and captures the essence of the holiday spirit during some of the darker times at Hogwarts and in the wizarding world in general. Now, I would summarize the chapter for you, but in the book, this actually takes up 3 chapters, and it looks like this video is already getting pretty long, so I'll save you a little bit of time. Let's just focus on the key Christmas moments from chapters 21, 22, and 23. I wish I could say that they were jolly and festive, but unfortunately, this is a very difficult time for Harry. The only fun part about this is that Dobby decorated the Room of Requirement with ornaments so that their last DA meeting had baubles that said "Have a very Harry Christmas" on them. Other than that, it's pretty dismal. Yes, Harry saves Arthur Weasley, but what the movie doesn't show is his time at St. Mungo's Hospital, which is a hospital for wizards. During their time in the hospital, a couple of things happen. First, the trio run into Lockhart, who forces them to take autographs. Remember, Lockhart lost his memory in Harry's second year and is pretty much confined to the hospital ever since then. Second, Harry overhears a conversation in which Moody says that Harry might be possessed by Voldemort, which completely ruins his mood over the holidays. And I think that's fair, as it would probably ruin anybody's mood. Then finally, and most importantly, the chapters end off with the trio running into Neville and his grandmother, who are visiting Neville's parents in the psych ward. Neville is very embarrassed, as he hasn't told anyone about his parents before, and it's a sad moment when we are confronted with the reality of what the Death Eaters have done to the families of the wizarding world. Unfortunately, the movie removed all of these details, and although they tried to make up for the Neville one by including him talking to Harry about his parents, it just isn't the same. Therefore, I've got to give the movie a 4 out of 10. But the book, despite its darker tone, earns a 7 out of 10. Now we come to our penultimate Christmas, which is from The Half-Blood Prince. Things are getting darker and darker, and this Christmas is intertwined with Harry's investigation into Snape. In the movie, we get a very short scene. We see Harry trying to convince Lupin and some others about the fact that he saw Snape talking with Draco about an unbreakable vow. Then we see possibly the most awkward Harry and Ginny moment in the series. And finally, Death Eaters attack and ruin everyone's Christmas by burning down the burrow. This might be one of the most controversial additions to the movie, because if you didn't know, the burrow doesn't get attacked in the book. In fact, Dumbledore himself has the most secure protective enchantments put around the burrow so that Harry and the Weasleys can celebrate Christmas in peace. And they do just that. It's one of the most full Christmas accounts we get, with Harry staying at the Burrow along with Fleur, who is in a relationship with Bill at this point, and then there's also Lupin. Once again, as we've gotten into these later books, there's way too much for me to unpack here, but here are the highlights. As a fun little start before the darkness, I'll tell you that the Christmas tree angel is a gnarly-looking garden gnome in a tutu, which is a very Weasley thing to do. But anyway, we read about bickering between Fleur and Mrs. Weasley, as Fleur is her usual annoying self, and Mrs. Weasley isn't a fan of Bill's choice to marry her. Mrs. Weasley is blasting wizarding Christmas music by a witch named Celestina Warbeck. The song's title is A Cauldron Full of Hot, Strong Love, and pretty much everyone except Mrs. Weasley hates it. During this time, Harry talks to Mr. Weasley about the conversation between Snape and Draco that he overheard, and Mr. Weasley says that he found nothing when searching the Malfoy home. Similarly to the movie, Lupin vouches for Snape and uses his time at Hogwarts as an example of Snape's trustworthiness. After all, Snape had plenty of chances to ruin Lupin's life. Lupin then takes this time to also explain to Harry what he's been up to recently, as he tells him that he's gone underground to learn what the werewolf population has been up to. This is where we learn about Fenrir Greyback, a vicious wizard who targets children. And most importantly, we learn that Fenrir is the one who turned Lupin into a werewolf. Then the next day is Christmas, and one funny detail is that Mrs. Weasley complains once again about Fleur, and instead insinuates that she would much rather prefer Tonks as a daughter-in-law. We learn that Tonks is not actually there, and Mrs. Weasley is sad that she's spending Christmas alone. It's kind of a funny little addition because at this point, people don't know that Lupin and Tonks are kind of a thing, whereas the movie just fully committed to it and shows Tonks and Lupin together. But anyway, the final part of this Christmas in the 6th year is that Harry gets a visit from Rufus Scrimgeour, the Minister of Magic. He shows up with Percy and Mrs. Weasley is ecstatic to see him, thinking that Percy showed up to spend Christmas with them. But they later find out that Percy only came as a manipulative tactic on the part of Scrimgeour. But why does the minister appear? After all, this is not shown in the movie. Well, he essentially offers Harry a job as the poster boy of the Auror department. Harry is the most famous wizard at the time and the hope of the people who think he's the only one who can defeat Voldemort. The downside of this is that no one has faith in the ministry, and for good reason, as Fudge screwed it up pretty badly. But of course, Harry refuses to be the minister's puppet. He won't be a mascot to help boost morale for the ministry, and the chapter ends with the minister saying that Harry is Dumbledore's man through and through. And Harry agrees. I am super excited to get to this moment in my Movies vs. Manuscript series because there's so much that I'd like to say. But for the sake of this Christmas video, I'll get right to the ratings. For the movie, I give it a 2 out of 10. It shows Christmas at the Burrow, but it also burns the Burrow to the ground. Kind of uncalled for if you ask me. If I watch the movie on its own, I can enjoy it for the drama and tension that it brings to the story. But when comparing it to the book, it really shows how crazy it is. The book Christmas, on the other hand, I give another 7 out of 10. It isn't as homey or feel-good as the first movie's Christmas, but it once again gives us way more detail about the Christmas experience. At least way more than books 2 and 3 did. And now we've done it. We're finally to the Deathly Hallows. And if you are waiting for a bright spot in this increasingly dark series of Christmases, then that means you've probably never read the books. Because as we all know, this Christmas just keeps getting darker. In the movie, we see Harry finally visit his home in Godric's Hollow, as well as see his parents' grave for the first time. Pretty heavy stuff. But as if that wasn't enough, Harry and Hermione venture into an old lady's house and get ambushed by Nagini. It's a gross scene that nobody wants to associate with Christmas time. At least the Christmas season in the Deathly Hallows ends off on somewhat of a positive note. As Ron returns, they find the sword of Godric Gryffindor and destroy the locket. Anyway, y'all know how it is in the movie, but you're probably wondering, what does the book say? Well, once again, we've got a series of chapters instead of just one. As you know, Harry and Hermione aren't at Hogwarts, and Ron has just left them pretty much right before they visit Godric's Hollow. So here's a brief overview of the key points regarding Christmas during this Horcrux hunt in the books. The first thing I'll mention is that Harry and Hermione use Polyjuice Potion to get into Godric's Hollow. They take on the shape of a middle-aged Muggle couple to look inconspicuous as they search for clues. This takes place on Christmas Eve, and most of the stuff you see in the movie is true. They go to the grave, and in the book, they also see the gravestone of Ariana and Kendra Dumbledore. Hermione puts a wreath over Harry's parents' stone, and then they move on to Bathilda Bagshot. Again, this part is also similar to the movie, just with some minor changes. For example, Nagini bites and nearly strangles Harry, holding him there for Voldemort. Harry can hear Voldemort's voice speaking to Nagini, and Voldemort himself arrives right as Hermione and Harry disapparate. But then the chapters move on to Christmas Day, which has Hermione and Harry decompressing from the previous night's insanity. They read a chapter from Rita Skeeter's book, which Hermione picked up at Bathilda's house. Then the following day, we get the scene with the Doe Patronus, the finding of the sword, and Ron's return. All in all, while I could nitpick these scenes for ages because there's just so many pages in the book that correspond to this part, I won't. For the most part, the movie got it right. Unfortunately, in a list of my favorite Harry Potter Christmases, this might be one of the worst. Although it's great in the story, it's not at all a Christmas miracle. I'm not gonna flick on the Deathly Hallows right after I've watched the Santa Claus. So I give the Deathly Hallows Christmas a 2 out of 10 for the movie and a 4 out of 10 for the book. Which means that we've got our final tally. Here are the combined and separate rankings, but I'll be looking at combined for the sake of this video. At number 7, we've got the Deathly Hallows, no surprise there. At number 6 is The Prisoner of Azkaban. Number 5 is Half-Blood Prince. 4 is Chamber of Secrets. 3 is Order of the Phoenix. 2 is Goblet of Fire, and of course my number 1, as well as probably everyone else's, is the Philosopher's Stone. But let me know if you agree or disagree with this list, and drop your own rankings in the comments below. I hope you all have an incredible Christmas filled with love, cheer, and hopefully no evil snakes. I want you to know that Jesus loves you, and my goal is that you consider Factor Fantasy your home away from home where you always are welcome to hang out. Have a great rest of 2025, and I'll see you in 2026.